You know, patience is the key to long-lasting success within any fields. You're not just going to drive your car 140 miles per hour and expect not to crash. You have to be so present and take your time. To the people out there, you know, you are much greater than who or what others say you are. Like, you are a vessel of the divine. You are rooted and you are connected to your highest self. Don't be afraid of change and do not conform to others' opinions or systems. Create your own identity in the life that you want to live. At the end of the day, the energies that are necessary for you are going to come to you if you do the work. Hi, this is Zay Carter of Xude Yoga, and you are listening to Dreams and Drive.
Hey, Dream Drivers, welcome to episode 256 of the Dreams and Drive podcast. Today on the show, we have international yoga instructor and healing guide Zay Carter of Xude Yoga. For many of us dream drivers, the road to finding ourselves and our purpose has many exits and entrances. And Zay is going to take us on her journey of self-discovery and healing and how she was able to create a space for Black, Indigenous, people of color, and those in the LGBTQIA plus community to be seen and heard, acknowledge themselves, and get to the root to heal from the inside out. Zay is someone who pitched the show, I want to say at least a year and a half ago, and we were able to connect this past summer before I went on maternity leave and have our own yoga flow session, and I was able to have her on the show, and just hearing her journey was so inspiring. I think there's so many parts of it that we can relate to. And you're going to hear of how she was able to come into being who she is today and really being proud of the work that she's doing for those in the LGBTQIA plus community. Some of the topics we're going to discuss include the difference between a hobby and entrepreneurship, Zay's life-changing travel to India, the importance of Black trans representation in the LGBTQ plus yoga community, and the power of speaking up for yourself, what that entails, and just what will happen in your life when you actually do step into who you are and are aligned in your purpose and your path. I'm really excited for you guys to be hearing a guest interview after so long, so please make sure that you're sharing this with your own communities. Remember, we are Dreams and Drive across the board, and you can use the hashtag Dreams and Drive as well. Find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. If you want to support the show, there are many ways that you can do so. Just go to dreamsanddrive.com/donate. That's dreamsanddrive.com/donate. And if you want to get Dreams and Drive merchandise, we still have gear available. Just go to dreamsanddrive.com/join. That's dreamsanddrive.com/join. All right, let's hear from Zay.
Hey, Raina, thank you so much for having me. Such a pleasure.
Oh, this is going to be such a delight. It's funny because whenever I have guests on the show, I always try to think about, like, where did we meet, right? And I think we connected back on Instagram, I want to say last year, because as I was doing prep for this, I realized you pitched the show back in August of last year, right?
Yes.
And we actually had the opportunity last month to do a flow session together. It was just really a great experience, and learning more about you and your journey. I really feel like there's a lot that our dream drivers can learn from your story.
Yes. Thank you so much. When I reached out to you the first time, I was actually living in China, and it was the first month I began my business. So I felt this drive to reach out to people of color, people of the LGBTQ plus communities, and figure out a way to spread my message on a much broader scale.
All right. Well, we're going to get into that, what that message is and why you felt the need to spread it, right? But as you know, I like to go back in time because in order to understand who you are today, we got to understand who you were a few years ago or many years ago, right? That child, Zay. So tell me, Zay, what was inspiring you as a child? What was the world like for you growing up?
Yes. So I was raised and born in a small town in Illinois, right on the border of Illinois and Iowa, pretty conservative town. And I was able to explore many of my passions and talents at a young age, which I'm so thankful for. And on the other hand, I also felt forced to partake in activities that I had zero desire for. So as a child, my imagination was infinite. And I knew I was special within this world. And I knew that I was going to make an impact further beyond, what I knew inside of Rock Island, Illinois. And at the age of 4, I would write poems. At the age of 8, I began making instrumentals and beats using FL Studio, which is a digital audio workshop. My mom, she ended up bringing home the software and it gave me something to do over the summer. And it was something I continued. And at the age of 12, I learned how to sing and rap. And I dropped my first EP at the age of 15. So I guess overall, I was inspired by the sounds and the movement that surrounded me. I was inspired by the city of Houston, which is a place I traveled to every summer for 10 years. And to be able to look back now, I guess I was inspired by overall female embodiment that I was surrounded by in the media and within my family.
Okay. Did you feel like, or what was the dream for you back then? Like, what was, where did you see yourself? When you're kids, like, what do you want to be when you grow up, right? What was that for you?
For me, it was a musician. I wanted to be this famous, big time musician. And I envisioned it and I saw it clearly. It wasn't until, I got older and that vision began to change. But that is what drove me as a child. My family, they put me into dance. I was in band. I was in the front line. So, learning the marimbas and the cymbals and a ton of percussion instruments really moved me forward. So I was able to produce my own music and I was able to create what was mine in a way. So it wasn't until, like I said, later in life where that dream sort of shifted. Music made me sort of depressed in a way when it came to the production stage. It's therapy for sure. But after all said and done, I felt empty after creating the work. So I knew at that time, it wasn't for me.
Oh, we got to get back to that because I think that's something that a lot of us often are conflicted with, right? Like we have these passions or we have these hobbies, but they may not be like, there's a difference between the hobby versus what we actually do for a living, right? You know what I mean? Like when you're doing something for consumption and when you're doing something for yourself, it's different than when you're building something for others. And I think that's something a lot of us deal with,
Yes, because then you're fighting ego. You're fighting ego. I feel when I was working on music, there was so much ego being shown because I wasn't making it for others. I was making it for myself. The fame and the money and that aspect of my dreams, that was all ego driven. And it wasn't until I discovered yoga that I was able to push that aside and see clearly what my purpose was in the world. And that is to heal communities, the Black, brown, and LGBTQ plus communities.
Thinking about where you are now in your life, right? And as a child, I feel like sometimes we all go through these moments where we start to wonder, who are we, right? Or how do we identify? As a child for you, how do you think you identified and how was that like, being in a world where you may have feel like people didn't really understand or maybe they did, but did you always feel like you were comfortable in your own body?
I did not feel comfortable in my own body growing up. I spent so much time looking at my masculine self that I had no idea that I had this feminine energy within me. And, growing up, especially being young and in a small town, with people that don't really look like you, it's difficult to find your own identity. So I struggled with, sexual identity. I struggled with gender identity. I struggled with racial identity. My mother, her parents are just mixed of multiple races, and same with my dad. My great grandmother came from Mexico, and on my great grandfather's side, they are from Germany and Belgium. On my dad's side, his family comes from Louisiana. So there's just so much trauma within me and within the family that I'm healing in a way, and that I'm bringing together to heal. As a child, it was difficult for me to find a balance between my masculine and feminine energy. And it wasn't until I up and moved to Houston, Texas, where I was very comfortable with who I was becoming.
When did that happen?
Oh, this happened in August of 2016.
Okay, so why that move? Like, what made you move from, Illinois to Texas?
So after realizing that my dreams were much greater outside of my small town, and knowing that I had to do some soul searching, I was in a bad relationship, not only with, a person that I loved, but with my father. And living in the house with my father was toxic for me. My father was an alcoholic, and for as long as I could remember, he was drinking. And he did stop drinking when I was 16, but the trauma still remained, and there was more verbal abuse and emotional abuse than anything. So in the long term, this led me to not be able to form an emotional relationship with many people around me. And I knew that I had to escape that toxic environment or toxic environments and move into a space where I felt safe, that I felt was sacred, where I felt at home. So I packed my Ford 500, and my mother and my sister drove me down to Houston, and I settled in with my grandma's sister. And that's where my healing life truly began.
How old were you at that point?
I was 19 years old.
I say that because it's such a, that's still pretty young, right? Like, you just out of high school, you still are finding yourself, and then to move far away and kind of rebuild or to start a new journey, that takes a lot of courage.
Yeah, it took a lot of courage. And even on my way to Houston, I had a journal with me, and I was writing and manifesting and just becoming clear on the person that I wanted to become, because I knew that I was destined to be so much greater than what others told me I was going to become. I was so much greater than what I could even envision. So at that time, being young and discovering self, I knew it was important for me to make that leap and to move forward within this journey of mine.
How did you prepare, or once you got to Houston, what were the things you did to make sure that you wouldn't have to go back?
I told my parents that I'm going to college out there, and then I'm going to be working on music. So I stayed with my grandma's sister. I was there for about 4 months. I received the job at PF Chang's, so I was working there. And after some time, I left the formal work field and went to the University of Houston, where I studied for a semester. And I learned so much at the U of H in that short amount of time that I was there. But I realized that there's so much more to education than the formal education system. So I dropped out and ended up pursuing my passion at that time, which was music.
Oh, wow. Let's talk about that dropping out, right? Because
Oh!
parents, whether you're with them or not, like, I think especially in our culture and just it's like education is seen as like the ultimate goal, right? Get that degree. And if you don't, people are kind of like, what are you doing with your life? So how did you navigate that between being confident with your decision, but also making sure that you didn't let what others were saying get to you?
Yeah, I had to create this shield of protection. And I had to set very strict boundaries with the folk that were around me. I believe it was hard for me to tell my mother. It was so difficult because, my mother and my father both went to school. They both got their bachelor's degree and they were expecting the same from me. And they wanted me to go and get a job and provide and just have this structured life. But I knew deep down that that structure just did not, it was just stunning my own growth. So I guess just having clear boundaries, and I had to find a tribe to connect with. And so they understood where I was within my journey, and they provided me the tools and the instructions to navigate this world and with ease and with grace.
Yeah, building that tribe is so important, right? Especially for you, because at this point you had to be around 20 years old, right? So that tribe. So talk to me about the years 2016 to 20, I guess around 2018, right? Like, how were you manifesting this music dream, and how were you dealing with maybe this isn't really what you wanted to do?
Yeah, so when I dropped out, I moved back in with my grandma. And I had my microphone, I had my laptop, I had my recording equipment, and I set up in the closet and would record and create music that was therapeutic for me at the time. It wasn't necessarily healing music, but for me, it was just a form of release. So this was 2017, 2018, and I was, networking. I was new to Instagram, so I was finding new people on Instagram to connect with and sharing my message, sharing my music. And I saw what was going to happen. Right before I moved to LA, I was offered a contract and the contract did not sit right with me. My family wanted me to accept the contract. Something in my gut said, do not do this. It was a 3-year contract. I wouldn't really have any rights over my music. I wouldn't have any creative control. And that was like my first taste of the music business. And I had to differentiate the music business and creating the music itself. Because that right there is, people get those both so confused and there's such a gray area. But when you're in it and when you see it in front of you, you're just like, wow, this isn't what I want.
Yeah, and did you realize too, especially when you immerse yourself in communities as well, you realize it's not what you want. And then what did you feel about like the people around you at that point? Do you feel like they were happy, or did you kind of feel like the whole, like we're all kind of struggling in some sense, and we're struggling with different things or different traumas, different, like when you can tell that even the tribe around you is kind of also feeling the same way?
Yes, we were struggling. We were confused. There was just this buildup of trauma that hasn't been released. And the people around me reflected who I was in that moment. So I had, toxic people around me at that time. And I I was just going through my own mental, spiritual, emotional journey. And it was difficult being around other toxic people that were experiencing the same things. At the time, in real time, you think it's good for you because they're like you. They see you. They
trauma
feel
bonds,
you.
right? Isn't that what it's called? Like
trauma bonds.
Yeah, like we suffering together. Yes, not like yes, like you're celebrating in suffering. And
Yes.
not realizing that's not productive. It's not necessarily the most healthy thing for you.
It's not healthy at all. And it's unhealthy when there's not a healing component.
Mm-hmm.
When it's just doing it out of just for ego in a way. And or just to cover up like a medicine, but the medicine is is a man-made medicine. I had to find my own natural medicines. I had to find this natural way of healing. Like I said, music was healing while writing and while recording and getting out my message. But once that was over, once I put the microphone down and walked away, I was tired. I was drained.
How did you end up in India?
Oh,
because I'm here wondering, right? Because I know you went to India in 2018 to embark on this journey, but what pushed you into realizing I need to make a change?
Yes. So in January of 2018, I went to a podcast recording and I met a lover of mine. And it's really a relationship that changed the course of my whole life. My partner introduced me to yoga and showed me how to truly love self. We worked on building this web and destroying hierarchy within relationships and our everyday lives. So during this time, when I was introduced to yoga, I was hooked. He took me to a yoga studio. I ended up buying the 1-month unlimited pass. I went every single day for a month. And it was probably about 3 to 4 months in where I started looking up on the internet, the capital of yoga. I wanted to go to the source, and what popped up was Rishikesh, India, which is in the foothills of the Himalayas. I told my partner I am going to be going soon for training, and I decided to book a flight where I completed my 200-hour yoga training. And this was the beginning of my yoga teacher journey, but then also the beginning of my business venture.
Oh, well, first of all, I love that you found love at a podcast recording, right? First of all, right? Yes to podcasting there. And isn't it funny how like you could have never imagined that, and how just going to that one event, right, led you to this person to change your life and then set you and help revealing you, or not revealing you, helped, I guess, inspire in you this new passion, this new interest, right? That time in yoga, what do you think changed about yourself? Like, what did you really learn about who you were at the time?
Within that time, I learned how to invest in self and invest in community. Mm-hmm. And by investing in self, investing in my health, investing in what was needed to reach my highest self, I learned how to barter and exchange services. And this was very crucial, and still is a very crucial part of my journey. As you know, bartering is the highest form of currency. Creating this sense of community and investing in the community with my services and with my resources, this really helped me. This taught me so much just about everything. within this journey.
Did you see yourself building a business before you went to India? Or was it kind of when you came back, you realized, wow, this could be something that I build a life around?
Yes, I was born an entrepreneur.
Okay.
I was selling.
I love that. Selling. I was too. I had my lemonade stand. I had all that stuff. Cookies, bracelets, bookmarks.
You have to. You have to exercise at a young age. I was selling mixed CDs out of my locker in elementary school. So I would have people come to my locker and I had a CD burner and I would make them little mix CDs. This was like the era of like Sierra Goodies and Ashanti. Mm-hmm. I noticed that there was a lack of people like me in the communities.
And when you say people like me, describe what is me?
At the time, I identified as gay or queer. So many ethnicities, so many races. And I had to do the internal work in order to get to where I am today, which I now identify as a trans woman. And that is a whole nother story and journey within itself. So knowing that, there is a lack of trans representation and a lack of just LGBTQ plus folk in general in the yoga community, I knew that there was a need that needed to be filled, and there was a service for that. So I had the idea of going to India to start the business. And even while in India, I was working on the website and just blogging and getting the systems in place. But I always knew that I was going to be an entrepreneur. It was just when I was introduced to yoga, it made so much sense where clicked. My entrepreneurial journey would go. Yes. It was so clear. It was so clear.
You know what I want to say about that, though? I feel like, when you it's easy to say this now in retrospect, but like sometimes you have to go into the fog in order to get into the sunlight, right? Like there's some parts of the journey that you had to experience so that this was clear, right? Because when you realize what wasn't clear, you know what being clear, how it feels when it is clear. Does that make sense? Like,
yes.
Like you have this piece about what you're doing and this sureness, whereas before it just wasn't, like you said, like the contract didn't sit right with you, right? Like this sat right with you.
Yes. And that's because I truly learned how to surrender. And I learned how to not force anything in my life. I had to learn how to be like a mountain, being still, being very clear, and allowing the clouds just to pass by, and acknowledge the clouds, see the clouds, but knowing that it's not going to stay. So I had to truly surrender to my thoughts. I had to surrender to the opportunities that came my way. I had to surrender to the people that entered my life. There was just surrendering. And that's what truly brought me to where I am today.
And you mentioned that there weren't a lot of people who looked like you in this space, right? Why do you feel like that is? Like, why do you feel like oftentimes those who identify as LGBTQ plus, right? Like why is it so hard to find that space? And why is what you're doing so important?
The spaces that are created, a lot of them, especially within the LGBTQ plus community, is created by white folk. And, they try to create a safe space for us to come and practice yoga or to come and heal in the front when you have been programmed to sit in the back. So it was my duty to find spaces and to gather people and to surround myself around people that created these spaces so we could create like a true community.
And imagine how powerful it is when you go into a space and you sit at the front automatically. You know what I mean?
Mm. Yes, yes. Oh my goodness. It's so powerful because when it comes to people like us, like I said, we just get so used to sitting in the back. We're sitting in front, and the front feels so uncomfortable. And that's where the healing journey truly begins, is within the discomfort. I always say healing is not pretty and healing is not comfortable. If you want to heal, if you want to truly step into your purpose, if you truly want to spread your message to the world and be as authentic as possible, in order to do that, you have to sit in the front and you have to speak up and you have to be seen and you have to be heard, no matter what that brings. You know, it's our time.
What was the hardest part about that? You know, sitting in the front, speaking up, being seen, being heard for you?
Speaking up. I've always had trouble with my throat chakra, which is connected to communication. As a child, I was always, silent, being told shut up, or, just how it is in the Black
Stay in the child's place,
Stay in the child's place. And it's like, but you have the capacity to expand beyond that. And for me, it was just like, there were all these boxes and standards that were created. And I knew I had to take up space. And I knew that there were others like me that were needing to take up space. And if you think about it, in a box, the space is limited. And that is the main reason why I even created Xude, because I see Xude as a space that is infinite. I consider us to be a universe where we can be seen and where we can be heard and where we can be felt all across the world.
Yep. And especially now with COVID, right? With everything being digital, it's like people are realizing that there are no limits with what you can create, right? Because you could have simply said, oh, I want this to only be in Houston, or I only want this to be in my community, but you're opening it up to the broad spectrum and really allowing community to be found, because there are people who identify who need this space that aren't just within the confines of like a 5-mile radius of where you live. You know what I mean?
Correct. Yes, Raina. So even when this is pre-COVID, I was living in China at the time.
Wait, China? Oh, wait. You know what? We got all into the conversation. I wanted to go to that because I'm like, how did you go from India to then living in China? Were you kind of on this, it was really a healing journey for you. Like you really were journeying around the world.
I was journeying because I wanted to I wanted to spend time with multiple cultures, but I also wanted to see how cultures perceive us, like how cultures saw us. And it was a journey. I was journeying around to so many places, and at that time I was journeying with intention. I wasn't just going to these spaces to go. I was going because I needed more wisdom and I needed to grow somehow. And this was one way where I was able to express myself and just move freely and bring joy and, allow people around the world to truly see my light in person. So going back to, even being in China and starting the business, at first I had actually started Xude to be a virtual yoga studio. That was the overall picture of Xude. I wanted it to be a digital, virtual yoga studio for Black and brown folks from the LGBTQ plus communities and beyond. And, seeing this shift into COVID, you see a lot of other yogis doing the same thing. In my mind, I was afraid that my business wasn't going to succeed because now it was oversaturated by all of these other yogis online. But I keep having to remind myself that this will last. If I keep doing this work and I set the intention before, this will last.
So how did you, it's just to get to some tactical things here, because there might be other people listening who are trying to build their own communities and within the wellness space. Like, what do you think were the key things that you did in the beginning stages and even now that really helped you build the community and get the business off the ground?
One thing I had to have was a clear mission. I had to figure out what groups were experiencing the most trauma. And knowing that I have so much trauma within my generations, there was work that needed to be done and I had to fill in the gaps. So I connected the pieces and I found a way to create a mission that worked for me and the community around me. Because I knew I didn't want to create a business that's not authentic. There's businesses that's created just because profit. And this wasn't created for profit. This was created to heal. This was created to gain visibility. This was made for representation because we lack representation. And another thing I would say is a self-care routine. Because without self-care, without rest, I really don't know where I would be, because rest is required to thrive, period. Like, rest to me is not sleep. Rest is being still within all the bodies. And this is the physical, the mental, the spiritual, and the emotional bodies. And even during this period, seeds are still being planted.
Yep. That is something, I'm not trying to hijack what you were saying, but just to reflect here, being that at the time that we're interviewing, 33 weeks pregnant, right? And one of the things that I've had to have, the conversations I've had to have with myself is, it's all right to be a little slower right now, because, we're so used to like moving fast, to always having to have an agenda, always having to have output, that I realized like this is the only time in my life that I'll ever just be with me again. So over the past few weeks, I've been feeling kind of like bad on myself for not being as quote unquote productive, right? Not releasing episodes every week like I had. But then I really had this conversation with myself like, Raina, this is okay, right? It's okay to pause.
It's okay.
Because I think there is, like you were saying, there is productivity in doing nothing sometimes, or in that rest, and in realizing that who created the rules, right? Who said that at 33 weeks pregnant, you're supposed to be outputting and doing all this stuff? Like you were just like, no one said that. I'm here punishing myself for no reason.
Yes. And hustling. I've been having a hard time with that word because on one hand, I see the hustle as having to get so much done to help my business grow and to work on self and, getting all these things done throughout the day and hustling. On the other hand, while doing that, when you hustle, you're not as present because there's so much going on. I see it as, if you watch the movies, like the director will have a person in the middle of the frame being still looking at the camera, and then you see life moving quickly around, in a city. They usually portray that on a bunch of movies where, people live in the city. And I feel the same way. There are so many distractions around us today. Our phones. If you have a car, you can go anywhere and be distracted by billboards, be distracted by other cars, be distracted by the road, everything. And it isn't until you are able to tune back into the breath, to breathe, to remain present. And it doesn't feel so much like a hustle anymore. It just feels like being. And I'm currently in and out of this book by James Clear, Atomic Habits. And he talks about doing 1% better each day, not having to even put in your 100%. You don't have to put in 100% each day, but resting, doing the 1% each day, and it will compound over time. That is true compound interest.
Yeah. And you know what that made me think about, Zay, is this idea of wealth creation and what does building a business really mean for you? So quick question here. Are you doing Xude full-time now?
I'm stuck between full-time and part-time. I just stopped doing my freelance jobs, which was, I was delivery driving for like 2 different companies. And I made the shift a few weeks ago and was like, okay, I'm going to work on this. I low-key started collecting unemployment.
And I asked you that, and I'm just telling you here because I feel like that's the hard part, right? When you realize, oh shoot, I'm building a business, and I also still need to make sure that it's growing revenue. That's the thing where I think a lot of us creatives get stuck at, right? Like, when is the right time to do it full time? Is there, that's the thing that I'm just wondering how do you manage that? So you said that you quit the delivery jobs and now you're focusing on it more. Isn't it scary?
Oh, yes.
I mean, I remember I quit my job. I was like, why did I do that? I mean, I collected unemployment too for those first 6 months. In New Jersey, they allow you that. And I'm like, okay, is this the right thing? Is this the right thing? And even now, I wonder too. I don't know. There's not necessarily a 100% answer there,
There's not. It all goes back to being present, because when you do that, you're able to make decisions with ease and with grace. And that was one decision that was difficult for me, knowing that, okay, you don't have another stream of income besides unemployment. If this is taken away from you, you still have expenses that you need to pay. And with Xude Yoga, once I made that decision, so many people have been booking. And I am just so thankful for surrendering and letting go and allowing all of what was necessary for me to just naturally float to me. I really just want to lay on my back on the river and enjoy what happens and not worrying about what happens next. What happened back there. There's going to be bumps. There's going to be hardships. But at the end of the day, we know the path we're heading down. We can see clearly in present time with the work that we do that in the long term, we are going to make a return, and not just a financial return, but a return on more joy, a return on more peace and happiness. I had to shift my money mindset. When I was younger and I got $1, I would spend it. And it wasn't until I really moved to China where I had to manage paper money. So I, created envelopes. I would put money in separate envelopes. And each week I would grab that envelope, and that was my budget for the week. I could not open another envelope for the week. So I was really able to budget out money And once I was able to budget, I learned that it wasn't about how much money I made, but it was how much money I saved and invested. And these investments weren't just in my business. These investments were in the community. Because when I learned how to invest in the community with just overall resources, everything came back tenfold. People began to invest in me, and they began telling their friends, look, this person does this work. I want you to work with them, and vice versa. So it ended up just becoming this ease. And I'm not saying there aren't any hardships at the moment. There are when it comes to just representation and visibility in general. But on the financial side, I just try to focus on the long-term relationships that I form with people. And that's the main reason why I created Xude Yoga, to be donation-based.
Yeah. And where do you see, what's the dream now, right? We talked about when you were a kid, how you had this dream of being a musician. Now that you have Xude Yoga, you're building this safe space. What's the dream now? Like 5 years out or even a year out, where do you kind of see Xude growing?
I see Xude opening up wellness centers for Black, trans, and queer women, people of color, and those of LGBTQ plus communities, and not just a healing center where people come and do yoga. Yoga means to unify. It means to unify the body, the mind, and the spirit. I want people to walk into that wellness center and walk out a whole new person. Within that wellness center, having therapists, having people that do nails, people that do hair, tattoos and facials, and people are able to walk in this space and feel safe. They are able to connect with so many people and create a community within their own. That is the future for Xude. I see that. We are also, we just launched our first YouTube video recently, and our channel is up and we're going to be posting every Friday. So I see that growing. There aren't any Black trans women on YouTube doing yoga. And I honestly don't think there are any Black trans women yoga instructors in the United States. I have been doing the research, and I haven't came across one besides myself. So the future of Xude is bright. I see myself working with so many Black trans women, and one person in particular, or a few people, Janet Mock. She is an incredible director. She directed Pose, if you've seen Pose. Oh, such a beautiful TV show. It shows really the true lives of trans women. And, special thanks to India Moore and MJ Rodriguez and Dominique Jackson, Angelica Ross, Haley Starr, for just representing us on a mass scale. And I see myself and others that work with Xude stepping into much larger spaces. I actually had a dream a couple of days ago about Megan Thee Stallion. It was so weird. And I was like, oh my God, I'm not going to.
You never know. Dreams mean a lot. But you got to pay attention to what they mean.
Know. You have to pay attention. And, she's from Houston, and yes, from right down the street. And after that dream, I came to realization that, Zay, you like to create music. You were interested in creating music, but now it's your time to heal those that create music. There's so much trauma within the hip hop community, and I don't see any hip hop artists working or even practicing yoga. Healing yoga is such a healing practice. It is one of the best ways of healing besides eating your fruits and vegetables and drinking your water. It's necessary for me to step into a much larger group of people to practice with. With Xude Yoga, we focus on creating smaller spaces. So I host a lot of smaller groups with a maximum of 5 people, and there's multiple time slots a day. I don't see us right now hosting these huge classes, and because I want us to focus on the people. I want us to focus on one person at a time, doing the work in small groups, and then that's going to expand outward, and it's going to be seen.
Yeah, and I feel like that's what I really feel like being a dream driver is, right? Driving the journey, but also allowing yourself to know that the road is infinite, right? The exits are infinite. The entrances back onto the road are infinite, right? That's what's so exciting. Whenever I come to an end of an interview with my guests, I always think about this journey that they've been having me on, right? And I'm envisioning you in the car, right? And you're looking back, and there's people behind you, and they are feeling like giving up, right? They're like, I don't know if I could do what Zay did. I don't know if I have what is in me. I feel broken. I feel like I need this healing, but I don't know where to start. What would you say to that person?
If you can see it and feel it, it's meant to happen. Patience is the key to long-lasting success within any fields. You're not just going to drive your car 140 miles per hour and expect not to crash. You have to be so present and take your time. And to the people out there, you are much greater than who or what others say you are. You are a vessel of the divine. You are rooted and you are connected to your highest self. And in order to get there, you just must take your time.
And that's the thing that I think a lot of us get discouraged in. I don't know if I have that time, or I don't know if it's worth it. So I love hearing that you say take that time and bringing comfort to those who are feeling like it's not their time yet, but it will be. If you can see it, like you said, you can do it.
Yes, time does not exist. Time is made up. Time is based on man. We have to truly abolish time and focus on where we're at right now. And another thing that I do want to say is it is very necessary in that time of taking it easy and taking your time. You must prune. And by pruning, I mean, clipping what's not needed. And when you think of pruning, you think of a plant. You have this huge plant. It's so beautiful. And then you have this one leaf. That one leaf, it may be dead. That dead leaf is going to trick the other leaf into thinking that it's dead, which will trick the next leaf into thinking that it's dead. And then next thing you know, your whole plant dies. It withers. It is necessary to clip and to cut cords. And no matter how hard it is, no matter the pain it may bring, it is necessary to grow.
Yep. So, Zay, can you tell our dream drivers where they can connect with you online, where they can learn more about Xude yoga sessions? Let us know how they can connect with you digitally.
You can connect with us at exudeyoga.com. We are at Xude Yoga across the board on Instagram, which is our main platform, Twitter, and LinkedIn, I believe, and Facebook. Yes, you can book a virtual private session on our website. And here we donate a portion of our proceeds to organizations that help uplift Black, trans, queer, people of color in LGBTQ plus communities. And these organizations include the Marsha P. Johnson Institute, the Black Trans Femmes in the Arts, the LGBTQ plus Freedom Fund, and the Black Trans Travel Fund. You can find all of this information on exudeyoga.com. So, make sure you book a virtual session. We also host in-person sessions in the Houston area beyond a 50-mile radius. You can also find us on our YouTube channel, which recently dropped. So make sure you go check that out to flow with us every single Friday.
All right. And I want to just tell people that it's XUDE yoga, right?
XUDE.
All right, because I know I was saying it wrong in the beginning too, so I want people to make sure if they're trying to type it, they can find it. All right, Zay. Last thing, if you want to be a dream driver, you have to have your keys to success. So, what do you think are 3 things that every dream driver needs in their toolkit before they hit the road?
Like mentioned before, a clear mission. What are you doing this for? What drives you? What brings you the most happiness, the peace, the joy that you deserve? What fuels you? So that's where you have to have a clear mission, because when you run out of gas or when you are drained, there has to be something that keeps you going. So if you don't have a clear mission, or if your mission doesn't align with who you want to become or what you're wanting to see in the community, then it will be difficult to execute. The next, I would say, and actually the most important, is a tribe that you can form relationship with. This can be mentors, close friends, family, just having people around you that see you and feel you, and they inform others about your journey, about your process, and vice versa.
All right, clear mission, tribe, and then what's the last thing that we all need in our toolkits? Something that has helped you.
I would say an efficient self-care routine, a very efficient self-care routine. I am really big on skincare. So I love to put on my face mask, take a bath. One of my good friends, Adana Ade, she has her own beauty line. So I'm always using her products, putting her oils in the tub, a bunch of herbs, and just relaxing. And making sure that I am eating right, that I'm drinking tea, that I'm drinking water, staying hydrated. And I want to create as much as a clear mind, body, and spirit as possible so that I'm able to connect closer to my highest self and connect closer to the communities.
Thank you so much, Jay. I want to take it back real quick, full circle, right? What would you tell your younger self now, right? All the anxieties you had as a young child, all the dreams, all the times you felt like you didn't belong. What would you tell your younger self?
As I stated, change is very uncomfortable. And when I was younger, I was afraid to change only because of that discomfort and of the discomfort of others around me. So I would just say, don't be afraid of change and do not conform to others' opinions or systems. Create your own system, create your own change, create your own identity in the life that you want to live. Because at the end of the day, the energies that are necessary for you are going to come to you if you do the work.
And before we end, I wanted you guys to hear this last part of our conversation. This was after we formally concluded the interview, but I love this part of the conversation. I want you guys to hear this as well.
Thank you so much, Raina. Like this, I didn't mention this during the interview, but while I was in China, I was listening to your podcast every single day to get through that experience. Because it was so difficult. It was so difficult living out there and, working under the table and not liking the job I was working at. I was just crying on the bus and listening to your podcast, knowing that once this contract was up and over, I would be able to start my business and expand and heal the world. And that was the motivation.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. It's always so interesting. Like, you know how you never know who's listening, you never know who's being impacted by what you're doing. I mean, that's kind of what keeps me going, even in this time where I feel kind of down and like I'm not necessarily doing as many episodes as I was before. I know that people are still going back and listening, or new people are finding out about the show. So thank you for sharing that. And it just goes to me, it's the same thing I told you, I got to tell myself too, that like people need the episodes. And even when I feel like, why am I doing this? It makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and for sure. I feel like even during that time, and even recently, I just didn't feel worthy being on this. Honestly, I didn't feel like my business was where it needed to be.
But you still pitched yourself. You pitched the show last year, so it's like,
Yeah.
So maybe it worked out. Maybe it worked out that it happened this year.
It worked out. So. Yes, I was just the confidence, and still continuing to practice and work on that. It's practice. So I just really appreciate that you gave me the space and that you gave me the opportunity to speak on behalf of, just Black trans women, because when you see Black trans women on TV, or, it's just in the internet and media, it's very negative. It's murder, and, they're talking about our lives after we're here, but we're not celebrated while we're here. So I'm really thankful that you're celebrating us and that you see us while we're here. It makes me feel so full. Thank you so much.
All right. So that's a wrap for episode 256 with Zay Carter. I hope you enjoyed hearing Zay's dream driving journey as well as her keys to success. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with a friend, screenshot it, send people a link, email it to them. You can find us across the board on social media, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Dreams and Drive, and use that hashtag Dreams and Drive to search or to share your own posts. I love to go in and see who's talking about the show, engage, all that good stuff. If you want to get our weekly newsletter, The Keys, just sign up at dreamsanddrive.com/join. That's dreamsanddrive.com/join. A lot of people also ask, hey, Raina, how can we support the show? There are two ways that you can do so. You can either go to dreamsanddrive.com/donate, or you can buy merchandise. We still have some Dreams and Drive crewneck sweatshirts and Dreams and Drive t-shirts available for sale. Just go to dreamsanddrive.com/shop. That's dreamsanddrive.com/shop. All right, guys, so I'm officially back in the game. I'm doing interviews again. I'm reading all the pitches, so make sure that you're continuing to pitch me, dreamsanddrive.com/pitch. Send people with interesting stories my way. I want to really open up the types of stories that we're sharing on the podcast this year, as well as push myself to become an even better interviewer and to really making sure that we're continuing the message of really inspiring people that they don't have to stay in park forever. If you're listening in right now and you feel like you're in park and you're always going to stay there, you are not. You have the power. You have the fuel. You can take yourself from park to drive. And I hope that's how you feel every time you hear one of these episodes. As always, keep dreaming, keep driving, and we'll chat again in episode 257. Bye, guys.